This episode of Outside Insights is brought to you by Placers, a values-led staffing partner helping businesses and individuals reach their highest potential. Build a flexible workforce or take the next step in your career at myplacers.com. Welcome to the Outside Insights podcast. Our goal is to provide content and ideas that help you close your personal and professional gaps by seeing and hearing how others have done it. I am your host, Chris Burkhard, and today I am more than thrilled to welcome Logan Herring to the show. Logan is CEO of the Work Group, a tax-exempt business in the Wilmington, Delaware area, an organization that does impactful community transformation and revitalization work, which we're going to get into. For our audience, not that I'm global, Logan, but we got to at least say it's East Coast, Mid-Atlantic. I have this group in Frankfurt, Germany that likes to listen to us, and they need to know where the heck we are. But welcome to the show, Logan.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for coming on Outside Insights today. So you recently celebrated year 10 in this role as CEO. It's kind of our hope that we can share the audience the story of the impact that you've had and that the work group has had over those 10 years. I think you guys talk about the speed of work and, how can you accelerate the speed of work in 10 years? But start with the work group. I know it's an acronym. Can you just outline what the work group is all about and perhaps begin to lay out its initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. So the work group is a collaboration of 3 tax-exempt businesses. The W is for the warehouse, the R is for Reach Riverside, and the K is for Kingswood Community Center, which I'll start with Kingswood. And, that's where I started working in 2016 to turn around an organization that was pretty much facing extinction. Kingswood, for context purposes, is a 17,000 square foot facility that sits in the Riverside neighborhood of Wilmington, which is historically the most disinvested community in the city of Wilmington and perhaps the entire state of Delaware. Kingswood, in this community, adjacent to public housing, adjacent to a public charter school, Eastside Charter School. And at Kingswood, we have our early learning academy and a senior center. The warehouse is a state-of-the-art teen center that was really birthed out of the need that I somewhat acknowledged at Kingswood, where we weren't meeting the needs of the teens in the city of Wilmington. At the time that I started working at Kingswood, Wilmington was suffering the effects of an epidemic. Given youth violence, we were the most violent city in America per capita, according to the CDC. And then Reach Riverside is a community development corporation really charged with implementing a national model. We're a part of the Purpose-Built Communities National Network. And Purpose-Built has an approach of 4 pillars: high-quality mixed-income housing, cradle-to-career education pipeline, community health and wellness, and economic vitality. We're one of close to 30 Purpose-Builts around the country. And the way we've structured those 3 organizations working together is that Reach Riverside is the managing partner and the warehouse and Kingswood are our service partners. So Kingswood focuses on that birth through 12. The warehouse focuses on age 13 to 24. And then Kingswood comes back around full circle and really supports the entire family and parents particularly. And Reach Riverside is charged with providing all the administrative support on the back end. So we have about 40 full-time individuals, everything from development, marketing, HR, IT, safety and security, data evaluation, all of those administrative functions. And it's also charged with leading that full community revitalization, which includes building about 800 units of mixed income housing. That's probably the longest elevator version of that pitch that I could give you, but hopefully that provides some context for everyone listening.
No, I think it gives great context to unpack the dialogue, and it starts to explain what I think is a strategic advantage. Having the administrative side of that is often, I'll use the term, I know it's not the flavor for this dialogue, but that not-for-profit often is at such a disadvantage between its mission and its ability to organize itself as a business to carry out the mission. So I know we'll talk about this, but in the spirit of this, you start obviously in Riverside. You started and you had to turn that around. Was the story of the work group about getting into it, solving problems, and seeing the next thing to build on to create a strategy? Or did you have a vision for how this would unfold in 2016? Could you see that far ahead?
I'm pretty good at seeing, I would say, essentially 3 to 5 years ahead.
Yeah, 10 years hard. It's a little opaque, a little fuzzy.
10 years is a little harder, and it gets clearer every day. No, I did not envision this. I didn't come to Kingswood and within a year said, well, actually 2017 is when we did come up with the warehouse. So I stand corrected. And in 2016, we started talking about becoming a purpose-built community. I would say that the scale, the level of impact, and the velocity of the speed of work, I did not anticipate. When I came in, it was more so there's a community center that is drowning. How do we throw it, a life preserver? And the first thing we looked at, and taxis in business, we looked at, well, how can we generate additional revenue? So, one of the things that I really kept a pulse on was rentals, like just renting our multi-purpose room to generate just revenue, cash. Like how many times can we rent it every weekend? And then making sure we have coverage for that, obviously. And then the
So
other
that's a
one
business
was,
concept that drives serving the constituency base.
Bingo. Yep. So funeral repasts, anniversaries, the likes, right?
Oh, right.
Those types of things, community events. But the biggest driver outside of that, because that was just buying time, the biggest driver was, I think, a more sustainable approach was looking at our early learning academy and saying, what can we do here? We had capacity for 122 children, but we were only serving about 30. And the facility was falling apart. We had an indoor swimming pool, not by design. It would rain, and when it rained, we had holes in the roof, and the hallway of the early learning center would flood. And so we have inches of water there. We had exposed asbestos on the floor and the ceiling. We were under probation because, we did not have the appropriate curriculum being delivered and the credentials of the teachers and, just all types of violations. And so I also discovered, shortly after joining, that we had pretty much a number of the parents that owed us a lot of money in childcare fees, over $20,000 in back fees. So at that point, I had to make a decision, right? It's one, could we survive in this mode, which is no, and two, could we do to become a thriving community center? And so if you look at the gap between 30 and 122, it's like, all right, we got to increase enrollment. The other thing is we got to make sure people are paying. But in order to demand those type of results, you have to give something, right? And so I brought all the parents in. I said, I don't blame you for not paying. I said, but you need to have a higher expectation for what we're going to deliver. And I have a higher expectation for you, what you're going to give us in return. And I said, so if you do have problems paying in the future, please just pull us to the side and have a conversation with us. Over the next year, we only had about 5 families that left for financial reasons. And we began to grow enrollment. And we went from generating about $6,000 a month in revenue per month to currently, I would say, probably over $250,000 in revenue per month.
Logan, there's this concept: if you give people a high standard, they'll live up to it. How does
Absolutely.
a young leader know to do that you looked at the cards you had to play and it seemed like the most transparent thing to do? I know you grew up in the community.
I would never say I did this alone.
Well, I understand.
And so, so the team that I have now is actually the 4 executives that I have, what we call our C-suite. 2 of those individuals were with me on day one. So one was the financial consultant who is now our CFO, Laura Mood. And Laura was actually the consultant prior to me coming in that blew the whistle on my predecessor who was stealing money from the organization. So she had the courage to actually speak up when she saw something that was going wrong, that was not only impacting the community in a devastating way, but 2, was going to really be the reason why Kings was shut down altogether. And so she had the courage to step up. The other person was Dave Foreword, who is our Chief Community Impact Officer, who at the time was just a volunteer, helping to turn around the board and involved in a number of other community-based activities. And those 2 individuals have been with me since the time I joined. And Dave has been like the strategic driving force that worked alongside of me, not just coming up with, all right, I think we can do this financially, but also being the sounding board and the credible older white man that went alongside of me to all of these meetings where I'm sharing the vision, and was the reason why people say, all right, I like the vision, but I believe it because this older white man of memes and experience is standing next to him. And so I don't overlook the fact that, Dave lend his credibility to, what I was saying, because I was younger, I was Black, I was of this community. And, who is going to trust somebody when I come in with those optics, if I don't have a seasoned ally next to me? And I think that a lot of times we don't talk about that, but I
Yeah.
think we have to.
Well, to broaden it, it's about collaboration and teaming and not going alone, to your point. Um, it just, I get where you're coming from, but it in hindsight, it seems so obvious as the approach to do it. But at the time, it must have seemed like a risk.
Well, absolutely, it was a risk, but I think it was more risky to not do anything.
Yeah.
And Dave has tremendous amount of private sector experience. He was one of the first 5 employees at Siegfried, and you and I know how big Siegfried is now. So,
Yes, we
and I
do.
know you know Dave personally from his days in business, so you know how sharp of a mind. And I like to say Dave has the left side of his brain and his right side of his brain actually work together.
Yeah, Dave and I would talk strategy. Dave and I would talk numbers. He's one of the few that can do both. So I know what you're talking about. So
And he's a compassionate individual. And I think that, not to cut you off, but just when you think about the culture of the work group, right? When we find ideal employees here, it's the people that can balance professionalism and passion at the same time. And when you do this type of work, typically in this sector, you have a lot of passionate people who don't always act professionally in the setting. And then you sometimes get really professional people that don't have a passion for the work. And I think here, if you're going to work here at the work group, you have to be able to strike the balance of both.
well, I think I have had the unique pleasure of being a part of something that people thought might not be winning. Right? That it's hard in the beginning. So I have this vision of somebody out there in a field dancing by themselves, all alone as the leader. And then, Dave Ford walks up and dances with you. And what a
Yeah.
difference that makes when, I mean, as leaders, we need followers, right?
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
saw something in you in that regard. So I have this belief that leaders embed culture, Logan. I've had the pleasure to be on a tour. I know we'll talk a bit about that. I recommend it to all. I think there are still some virtual components if we have folks that aren't in the market, maybe.
We'll make
But
it work.
everything about your organization today feels different. There's an incredible quiet strength and confidence, sense of accomplishment that anything is possible. And it's because things are happening and have happened. But leadership is culture and it's visible. Why is this working?
I would say, well, other people would say is the speed of the captain, the speed of the ship. I would take consistency. I know it, and I would also say the consistency and visibility is extremely helpful. I believe as a CEO, I have 3 main responsibilities: create a vision, get people excited about the vision, make sure we have the resources to carry out the vision. And that vision, as we spoke of, is not me creating it all alone, right? But I do have the primary responsibility of making sure we have a vision and everybody works towards that. And part of that is getting people excited about it. So being on podcasts like this one today,
Yeah.
making sure that we have visibility on social media, make sure I'm speaking, and my team are seen as experts in this field and out and about. And then that third one is making sure we have the resources. And the resources aren't just financial; it's also the people. And I think that that's the most important one, is having the right type of people. And some people, I think it's Steve Covey talks about, get people on the bus. They don't have to necessarily be in the right seat. And so we try to make sure we have the right people on the bus. But I think I have to be also comfortable with the fact that everybody can't be on the bus forever. And so although, I might be driving the bus, there might be a point where I pull over and somebody has to take the wheel. But for right now, I'm driving it. And we want people to get on the bus to agree with the destination that we're going. And I think that that's what we've been able to do. And so, that high level of visibility, when you come in, what you see is what you get. And also just holding people accountable when you don't work towards that. But at the end of the day, as a CEO, it's my job to try to model it as best as I can. And I'm learning as many tricks of the trade at home with a 14 and a 9-year-old two boys, trying to raise them, that I have to try to model the behavior I want them to see. And my wife is doing the same, because we don't want them dating a woman that doesn't know how to treat her husband and vice versa. And then also setting an example as, what I want them to grow up as men. So it's the same thing, right? If you want a culture, you got to be able to model it yourself. And hopefully I do that every day.
I grew up with a mentor that talked about that that parenting is the same as leading, is the same as communicating. It's just and you are right, especially in the role that you play. It's what you do, not what you say, in so many
Right.
things. And I believe part of your success has been by uniquely being able to secure resources. And that is people, right? That is, that
Absolutely.
have the talents, and personally and professionally along the way. So I can't imagine, as a young person, you thought of yourself, you know what, I'm going to be CEO of this meaningful thing. Like, that's my life dream. So how did you get here, Logan Herring?
Yeah. This is my favorite question that too often I'm never asked. And so I'm glad you
That's
asked.
why I'm your favorite podcast host, Logan.
That
Let's
is
get
why,
that out of the way.
you said it, I didn't.
I know. But if I say it enough,
So,
maybe it'll rub off,
yeah. So how did I get here? Well, we'll start with my first job ever. And it was at the Boys and Girls, our local Boys and Girls Club. And I went to the Boys and Girls Club every summer for camp. And I remember the last summer that I was eligible to go to camp, I was 13. And for the last few weeks, I couldn't go because my mom couldn't afford the weekly fee. And it just didn't resonate with me. I didn't understand why you couldn't afford, whether it was $100 or whatever the case may be. She's like, you can't go, I can't afford it. And that struck a nerve. And so the next summer I said, well, I want to work. I want to work at the Boys and Girls Club. I want to be a camp counselor. I want to make money. And so I would ride my bike, I think it was a 4 or 5 mile ride, and ride my bike to the Boys and Girls Club. And every summer I worked there. And then I did that every summer until I went to college, and ended up at college at Goucher College in Towson, Maryland, about an hour drive from home. And every summer I worked on campus at a reading enrichment camp for inner city youth in Baltimore. And I played soccer and basketball, so I also did sports camps at the camp. So I was always in this work of working with children, mentoring children, helping children that come from similar backgrounds and communities from which I came. And then I came back to Delaware and started a nonprofit at the age of 23 with my best friend and my brother. And I'm particularly using the term nonprofit in this case because we did not run it as a tax-exempt business, which is why it no longer exists. So we ran it for about 10 years. Eventually, my best friend left because Eugene Young, he went to go work for Senator Cory Booker a few years before we ended the organization. And my brother left to support my nephew, who ended up playing football at University of Michigan and for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And my nephew was really the impetus of the entire organization called Delaware Elite, which is a mentoring program for student athletes. And my brother called me one day as I was leaving my place of work, which was a farmer's market. So a lot of people don't know this about my personal professional journey or how I just made ends meet. But my senior year in college, I started modeling in New York. And because of a relationship I had in college, I met someone, and it just snowballed into, I ended up working, modeling in New York. So I was going back and forth to New York 2 or 3 days a week. And if you think about it, I graduated college in 2004. So around 2008, when the economy took a downturn, what's the first thing that businesses are going to really scale back on? And that's marketing. So the modeling wasn't really making ends meet. And so the same guy who was managing my modeling career also was working with a really famous author. And that author published books. So we said, well, let's start publishing books. So we started to publish, and we started to distribute books at farmers markets. And one of those was in New Jersey. And it became, I wouldn't say fairly lucrative, but I did well every week, well enough that I could continue to or start this work with this nonprofit and not really have to do your traditional 9 to 5. And so for 6, 7 years, I'm doing Delaware Elite. We started it in 2006. And, things are going well. And then the Kindle came out and books went digital. And so the profit margin reduced significantly. And so I reached out to one of our funders.
Thank you, Mr. Bezos, for that.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. But,
Yeah.
you can't fight evolution, right? You can
No.
only adapt and change course. So that's what I did. So I evolved, and I evolved personally. And so I reached out to a mentor of mine, one of our first funders of Delaware Elite, Dave Cisco. And I said, hey, I could really use a job. And at this point, I'm doing the books, but seeing that's not making as much money. So I went back to my high school and I'm substitute teaching. I'm coaching soccer and basketball. And I said, I really want to be a teacher because the books aren't making any money. Modeling's not making any money. This is the only thing I really know where I have community and I'm still giving back to kids. So I want to be a teacher. And so I'm teaching at Sanford, substitute teaching. But the head of the school said, well, I can't put you into the classroom until you go and get some continuing education, a graduate degree. So why don't you go to Wilmington University and get your master's? And so I pursued my master's and I'm in school for 2 years, 4.0, pursuing secondary education in mathematics. I was going to be a math teacher at Sanford. At this time, I'm making less and less money with the books. And so I called Dave Cisco and I'm like, I need a job. So he said, well, we just put these technology centers in the Boys and Girls Clubs. Let me call over there and see if we could put you to use because we have the technology, but we have no one to teach programming. And so he calls the president and CEO at the time, George Capansi of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Delaware. And George was like, of course, I know Logan. He used to work here. I know his mom. She used to be on the board. So they gave me a shot. Come in here and develop some programming. So as you mentioned, the work group is an acronym. I'm known around here as an acronymologist. Everything relates back to an acronym. Part of the reason is I grew up with a bunch of women and they always play Scrabble and I always sat next to them and I helped them form words out of letters. And so that's the way my brain works now. And so I started a program called BOSS, Beating Odds, Studying STEM. I wanted to make learning technology and entrepreneurship cool. And it's like, you could be your own boss.
Not an easy
And so I
task.
started doing that
Name
work. Yep. So I started doing that work at the Boys and Girls Club and we started to partner with kids coming from Kingswood Community Center. And so the Boys and Girls Club loved this program. We did it for a year. Like, Logan, can you help us do STEM programming for the entire state, all 44 sites? I was like, of course. So I did that for a year. And then Dave Cisco came calling and he said, him and the other Dave that I work with now and said, hey, Kingswood is in a really bad spot. Can you come over and just join the board, bring some energy and help us? And I couldn't say no to Dave. I felt compelled because, he helped me get the job over at the Boys and Girls Club.
Was that the first board spot for you at that point?
It's the second.
Okay.
The first one, also because of Dave Cisco, was Dream Chasers or the McLaughlin Foundation. And that was former Mayor Bill McLaughlin, now his son, and they had a foundation. And so it supported the Dream Chasers program. So that was my first board. Kingswood was the second board. But both involved Dave Cisco. And this world is all about relationships. And so now I'm on the Kingswood board. And shortly thereafter, literally within a month or two, Dave comes to me and said, hey, we need a executive director at Kingswood. And so unbeknownst to me, this entire plot was to get me invested, get me over there on the board. And then he said, would you be interested in being the executive director? They said, we could do like a job share thing where you can do 20 hours at the Boys and Girls Club, 20 hours at Kingswood. We could split the salary because Kingswood doesn't have a lot of money. I had missed payroll last year, so we don't have a lot of money to pay you, but I'm pretty sure George would go for this. So he called George. George did not go for it. George was like, if you want him, you better come get him. So somehow they found the funding, and I'm pretty sure I understand how the funding came to be. But long story short, well, to make a long story longer for that matter, I started February 1st, 2016, supposed to be an interim position. And 3 months later, like, no, you're the guy. We want you.
Well, Logan, it's still interim, right? It's just 10 years of interim, right?
It is. And there's one other unique piece about this. And we didn't even talk about how my grandfather did all this work back in the day. Because a lot of people have heard that story. But also unique to this story is that 5 years into running Delaware Elite, there was a young man in our program who suffered a home invasion. And him and his mother were shot. His mother died in his arms. And that young man in our program lived 2 blocks away from where I'm currently speaking from, which is the warehouse, our teen center. So there was a bit of taking a risk, but there was also like, how do I atone for not running Delaware Elite as a business where we were very, very isolated in terms of we wanted to do everything for the kids. So we did our own SAT prep. We did our own mentoring. We did our own etiquette classes, and we were going and talk to the teachers, and they would stay over our house at night if they were having domestic issues at home. Like all of the things we were trying to do ourselves, and we just burned ourselves out, nor were we taking salary or any type of payment for this work. And so as I was trying to scrounge around to make money, my best friend Eugene was working overnight at Hotel DuPont, and my brother was funding a lot of this on his credit card because he was older than us. So it just wasn't the way you approach this type of work if you really
It
want to sustain
it
it and
has to
have
be
impact.
sustainable,
Yeah. So that's
and it
that.
has to
So now I
serve
bring
everyone.
now here just full circle. This is how I blend that professionalism aspect that I'm talking about, but then the personal drive, which is the young man, right? And the reason why I do this work back in the neighborhood where that horrific event took place, where I was one of the first people on the scene, and they say, you got to get to the hospital because you're the only person that he wants to talk to. And I'm like 27 at the time when that happened and did not know what to do. So we'll never be caught in that position again. Run it as a business, run it with purpose and passion, and you have outcomes like the ones we're able to speak about now. That story I don't tell often about my journey, so I appreciate you allowing me the airtime to divulge that.
Well, this is just connecting dots, but I'm a graduate of the same Boys and Girls Club. I grew up in Ellesmere, Logan, and where I am today is another entrepreneurial story of my family. But I also remember going there and sort of begging them to let me in. You know,
Mhm.
I was just a kid from Ellesmere, and rode my bike or walked over, and it meant a lot to me to be there. And I can remember, long time fast forwarding to be standing next to George and my dad selling Christmas trees there through Wilmington Rotary, like the
Yep, we used to
evolution.
always get our Christmas trees from there too.
I mean, I was a kid there, and then I was a volunteer there, and it's just. And I also went to Towson, by the way, right down the street from you at Goucher's. So the
No
world is
coincidences.
no coincidence in life. That is for sure. All right.
Did you
Well,
always have to wait until like 2 days before Christmas to get your Christmas tree? My mom always like procrastinated and waited till like the very last
my
minute.
dad would say we need to wait for everybody else to get the other trees, and we'll get what's left. And
Yeah,
I,
the
as
$15 or the $20 tree back in the day. Yeah,
as an 11-year-old, that was pretty frustrating to always get the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. But
it was traumatic.
I think there was a reason we were getting it anyway, and I just that's all good in that regard.
Yeah.
So it all fits. So wow, I'm glad that we're able to put some of that out there because I think it does build towards things. Um, you have a language, Logan. You have a philosophy. The idea of the business not being a not-for-profit, and we've talked about some other things. But I think it's important you talk about tax-exempt versus not-for-profit. I think it supports the story you're laying out.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, nonprofit is not a business strategy. And there is such a negative connotation, even though people don't perceive it that way, when we say the word nonprofit. When I hear it, it's like, oh, that's cute. It's charity work, or you're working with maybe the poor or some type of a social movement, but it's not really respected in the business world. And because it's not, we expect these type of efforts to do more with less on a shoestring budget, and we don't invest in infrastructure. At the end of the day, no, it's our job to drive a profit, but that profit gets reinvested in the community, it gets reinvested into the business, it gets reinvested into people. And ultimately, businesses are created to solve for problems, right? And if you look at in this sector, they're created to solve for some of the hardest problems, which are social issues, social problems, poverty, poor education, substandard housing, the lack of economic mobility, or quite frankly, racism or housing segregation, whatever the case may be, right? Very long-term institutional systemic issues that don't allow people and strip them of the opportunities to live the American dream. And if we're solving for these most complex problems, then we need complex strategic thinkers, infrastructure. And so what makes us different from a for-profit entity that understands the value of an infrastructure, understands value of people that can support HR and data and marketing communication? We're doing the same type of work, which is why we approach it that way. Because if we don't, right, we're going to burn people out. We're going to get people that don't have the competencies or capacity to do the work. And it's going to be this never ending cycle of people coming in and out, in and out, in and out because they're passionate, but they're not good enough. Or they're too good and then they leave to go elsewhere because we're not compensating them enough. And so I just get so frustrated because, we look at these organizations that really are doing great work as if they're less than, or the people that work there are less than or not capable of. And so what we do is we like to raise the bar. We like to raise the standard. We like to raise how we talk about it. And quite frankly, we like to compete with those entities that are driving, profits for their stakeholders. And our stakeholders are just the community and the people that do this work. And I don't feel like it's that much different.
I get a sense that the community itself is part of the flywheel that's making this the win-win. I don't know if I've never heard you use that word, but I feel like the community itself is making that win-win versus win-lose possible.
Absolutely. And one thing you'll always hear me talk about and my team, quite frankly, is we often want to center the people most affected by the work we do in the work. And I think intuitively that sounds right. But how we execute on that usually falls short, and we actually end up doing more harm than good. I'll give you an example. When you do these types of development projects, right, we often say we're gentrifying, and that's seen as something negative. And we actually have flipped it and say, no, we're gentrifying, but it's something positive. The nuance is we're doing it without displacement. And so out of the first 141 homes we built, 26 families that occupy those 141 homes moved from directly across the street. And when we have meetings with the families or anybody that's a recipient of this work, the one thing I tell my team is do not ask people to give you their time for free, because you're asking a population of people who have the least amount of disposable time and income to give you that for free, because we want to have a clear conscience to say that we included them in the planning or the design. But what you're actually doing is providing more harm, because most likely they're going to have to take off for one of the 2 or 3 jobs they have. They're going to have to find somebody to watch their kids. They're going to be missing an opportunity where they can cook a meal for their family. So at the very least, we're providing food. But what we've gone to extent to do is hire 8 of our residents and call them VIPs, Village Impact Promoters, yet another acronym, and pay them $1,000 quarterly.
Logan, do you have a glossary of all these acronyms?
You know what? My team is working on it, like a key.
That has to be in show notes for all the right reasons.
We like to use it as pop quizzes for like our employees that are like 90 days in.
Culture.
Just to keep them on their toes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got one to work in. I'll give you 2. So we'll plan another one. So
sounds good. So our VIPs, we pay them $1,000 a quarter to come to these meetings, to be advocates. We had a tour. We hosted a group of about 24 people from Poughkeepsie, New York, who's doing similar work and trying to do work that we're doing. And we invited our VIPs to be on a panel so the residents from Poughkeepsie can ask our residents, what makes this place special and why are you involved? And I didn't witness it, but I witnessed the aftermath, which is people hugging and crying afterwards, a swag swap where they swap T-shirts. It was just, how they swap jerseys at the end of a game.
Sure
I'm getting chills talking about it. And then even at the warehouse with our teams, we pay 18 executives. So the same exact model, we pay them year round 15 hours a week, $15 an hour to help us run the building. And again, we're not asking teams to come in, volunteer, and be mentor. A lot of them are offsetting the household income of their parents. So I just feel like, again, when you look at it as a business mindset, it's almost like a focus group that you would pay them to come in and talk to you and help lead that work. It's the same philosophy.
You're also giving those teens life skills?
Big time. Financial literacy, public speaking through Toastmasters, you name it, social customer service, everything. It's more about creating agency, creating confidence, because I don't know if you've been around teenagers lately or even young people in general. People in general, can people really have a conversation like you and I are having right now where they're not struggling or looking down at their phone or can't make eye contact or can't keep a conversation going more than 15 seconds? Like, these are the skill sets that we're losing in the workforce. And I'm not of the faction that believes AI is going to take over everything. I believe it's going to have an impact, but it's only going to be good as the people who are really in control of this world deem to use it. And so who do you want in control of this world? And I'm trying to build the next workforce to run this world. That's like part of my goal.
All right, Logan, we're 36 minutes in. Are we hitting the right notes? We're good.
I think so.
All right. Just want to make sure that we're
right notes. Yeah.
Very good. So you touched on this, but for me, the organizational gap is really interesting. Talking about the challenges with talent within your organization is changing and evolving at that speed of work. What's that like for you? Because I think you've got a win-win model. I know you've got a win-win model, but what's that like today?
Yeah, I think we recognized probably a year ago that we could no longer hire for now. We have to hire for tomorrow. And to be more specific, at least 6 months from now. Because what we found is that a lot of the folks that we were hiring for now, in 6 months, they couldn't keep up. And so we have to think about, we want to hire the talent, the people that can drive this organization forward to the vision we have collectively versus the people who we hire who see what's happening right now. And that's a mindset shift that has to be communicated to our HR. And this is in collaboration with our HR, right? Because what happened is you hire people and then 3 months, literally 3 months, they're obsolete to what the job entails from them. And there's only but so much professional development that you can do. And, we do that. And there's almost so much coaching and mentoring, but we really want to hire people like can advance the ball. And if not, we're doing them a disservice because we're bringing them into a lose-lose situation. And we don't want to do that to people either.
Logan, I think is a very contemporary discussion that many well-run organizations are facing when moving at this pace. It's almost like you have to find people with the right mindset that know that they'll need to evolve at that pace. It's something they have to be comfortable with, that growth and skills and experiences, you just got, and the capacity to be able to do so. And not be complacent. I'm not saying anybody is. It's just, I think an organization doing great work and moving at that speed, it creates a new variable for success.
Yeah. You ever had, I don't know, you might now, but do you have a fish tank or you had a fish tank growing up?
Oh, no, I was never allowed to. Hamsters, no fish tank.
All right, but you still might get the metaphor. When you buy new fish, what you have to do before you put them in the tank or when you put them in the tank?
You got to clean the tank.
You know what? I did the same thing with my kids the other day, and my oldest one said, well, you got to clean the tank. And I'm like, okay, that wasn't where I was going.
So
but
apparently I'm just like your oldest. Sorry about that. Yes.
He's 14, so you're
That makes
young
sense.
at heart. How about we say that?
Makes sense, yeah.
No, well, yeah, I guess you got to clean it. I don't know about that part. But the other part is you don't just drop them in the water. You put the bag in and you hang it on the side. And yes, that part, that's where I was driving. And you got to let them get acclimated to the temperature of the tank, and then you can put them in. Yeah, I don't have much time for that. And it's not Logan, don't have much time for that. Our community doesn't have time for that, right? So there's an element of it. Maybe put it in for like a day, but we got to drop you in quickly. And you got to hit the ground running. And so that's essentially
the urgency of mission.
Yes. And there's a constant, people, someone did ask me last week, where does this urgency come from? And I don't really sit on my hands, nor does any of my team, but I am constantly reminded, and maybe this is why I don't sit on my hands. When you're proximate to the work, you don't feel like you can wait on anything. And what I mean by being proximate, I'm going to give a very tangible, and this is not a figurative statement. This is very literal. You've been in my office, and I share it with my 3 fellow C-suite members. But right outside of the window of our office is one of our community refrigerators, where we stock this refrigerator 6 times a week. And the number of people that I see come up to this refrigerator every day, and the number of people that I see walk away empty-handed because it empties so quickly, reminds me of the urgency of our work. So not that I don't have a respect or appreciation for work-life balance, which I kind of don't, to be honest, but I don't want to hear that, I'm off at 5 and I need you to make a call or respond to something after 5 p.m. that I'll get to it the next day when our families are struggling to eat, when our kids are at times being killed, quite literally, when there's so many pressing needs that our community doesn't have the luxury of saying, well, it can wait till Monday morning, right? These urgent matters that we continue to be reminded because we're so proximate to the work is something that keeps the fire lit underneath of me and the rest of my team. And that is something that we hold each other accountable for.
So I think you'll allow this. And first of all, I understand when you can see your customer like that. And I mean, it just, the purpose of why you get out of bed is crystal clear, right? The challenge is in a world where passion and professionalism matter, as the leader, take it from someone who is the maniacal founder. I woke up one day and realized I couldn't pour from an empty cup, So my advice and admiration for you is I bet you do take care of yourself. You work very hard at it, but there's things that only Logan Herring can do. It's quite obvious. And you just got to keep whole for that mission. And I don't know why I'm saying it other than that's my journey. I woke up one day, like didn't have what I needed for the mission and had to rethink how I did that.
Yeah, well, I want to respond to that directly because there is a secret that I have that I'm quite frankly, I don't mind sharing. But I do want to touch on a word that you used, and I don't think that that was just happenstance. And it's the word customer. And so typically in this type of work, you would say maybe clients, right?
Oh, I don't like the
But
word client, by the way. We share that in
yeah,
common. It feels
yeah.
slick
And I'm
to
not
me.
saying you, because,
No, I
obviously you and I
understand.
have a lot in common. We went to the same club, Boys and Girls Club. We, Towson we have in common. So I'm not surprised. But internally, we use the word customer, maybe not externally for various reasons. But the reason why we use the word internally is because customers have choice. And if the programs we're providing are free, we can tend in this sector to treat people as if they are getting free services. Like it doesn't have to be a high quality customer service. Like the product we're giving them, if we're giving them food, maybe it can be, stale bread and they should be okay with that. That our facility shouldn't be clean externally and internally, that our website shouldn't be good, our social media should only get a post every 30 days. Like these are the things that when you talk about the standard of excellence and raising the bar that we have to continue to raise because we are competing for our customers. And I don't think we necessarily think about that. But if you thought about that like a business, like a Netflix or an Amazon or a DoorDash, right? They are obsessed with their customer to the point where they can make suggestions and influence their purchasing. So shouldn't we be in the same position to do the same thing and be obsessed with our customers and what their needs are and get ahead of them so eventually they don't have those same needs anymore? So that's that. So I went off on a tangent on the customer thing. But back to taking care of myself, and I do appreciate that so much. I don't know if it would surprise you or anyone else, but it probably does because most people in a professional setting can't sustain this. I have not taken a vacation in my entire time doing this work in this neighborhood that has lasted probably more than 3 or 4 days. Typically my vacations are like Friday to Tuesday, and they come very few and far between. But how I've been able to provide that stopgap is that we practice something called Mental Health Mondays. And since COVID, every Monday we don't have reoccurring meetings. And half of the day, we really want you to focus on your own health and mental health. So, for example, as we record this podcast on a Tuesday, yesterday, what my Monday looked like was I went to the chiropractor. I got my hour-long massage. A lot of Mondays, I'll wash my car. Some Mondays I might sleep in, or I'll take the afternoon and catch up on some of my shows. Those are the type of things I do on Monday. So it allows me to avoid the Sunday scaries, enter the work week where I can actually catch up on emails and phone calls, and really ramp up into that Friday afternoon where I can finish the week strong instead of what a lot of people do is like that Friday afternoon, they might, take off, and sometimes corporations do it in the summer. But this really allows me to ramp up to the pace that I really need to be at for the full work week like I anticipate. And it's also allowed me to not burn out. And so it's the reason why I don't need extensive long vacations like, a lot of other professionals do.
So you found a way to sustain yourself. And it's a cultural thing. The
Yeah.
Google gave people 1/2 day a week to create.
Yeah.
It's very similar. Yeah. Logan, you've learned lessons earlier. I was an 8 o'clock Friday night guy running my business I'm not anymore, but for 20 straight years, I was the last one in the office because I thought that's what I needed to be, So we learned those lessons along the way. 2026 seems like a big year for the work group. You've got some things coming up.
Huge.
Want to cover some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing is we have the new Kingswood Community Center opening this fall. We have our grand opening November 6th and 7th. It is an 81,000 square foot facility where we have an early learning academy that will serve anywhere between 200 and 250 children, infants to before and after school, summer camp. We also have Nemours Children's Health that will be located inside the building, leasing 15,000 square feet from us to provide primary care, behavioral care, dental, and vision, along with some other things that we're
Speaking of
working on in
rental
collaboration
income,
with them. Absolutely. Again, you see how, it's business driven, because we have to sustain this $52 million facility with all the bells and whistles. And so that doesn't come easy, but very thoughtful and strategic about how we do that. This year, we are also bringing online about almost 400 units of new housing.
Goodness.
Yeah, about 350 to 400 units of new housing. We're opening 101 units in the next week or two for move-ins, and then we have about 150 additional under construction, including a senior mid-rise, where Christiana Care is going to be at the bottom of that building, right across the street from Kingswood Community Center. A lot of new construction, a lot of dirt moving, and then we have a new park that we're building that'll be right in the center of the neighborhood, which the community designed. It has a walking path, workout stations, a splash pad. That was a non-negotiable by the residents. So a big year. Not sure when you plan to release this podcast, but I'm gonna go ahead and just put this out on a limb. In the spring of 2027, we're going to be hosting a very big conference related to our work, and I'll just leave it at that because I'm not supposed to say exactly what it is. But that will bring about 800 to 900 people to the city of Wilmington for about a 3 to 4 day conference, and we're really excited about hosting that and being able to showcase our community, our city, our state, for being a true leader in this space across the country.
I look forward to learning more about that, and I'd say that that folks are going to listen to this sometime early summer in 26. So
then I can definitely make the announcement. We're hosting the Purpose-Built Communities Conference, the 2027 conference, May 10th through the 13th here in Wilmington. It'll be at various hotels throughout the city, and then we're going to have a huge block party right here in Imani Village and Riverside, showcasing the new Kingswood Community Center. So it's going to be special.
And I'm not sure everybody caught it. Imani Village is where those 400 homes are.
Yeah, eventually it'll be 800 homes.
Okay.
But yes, Imani Village, and Imani stands for hope and faith in Swahili, and it takes a village to raise a child. So everything we do in terms of branding is very, very intentional. And Imani Village is no different.
So you know what a BHAG is?
Yeah.
Big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yep.
I don't know if you'd prefer to answer it that you're in the act of achieving your BHAG, but where's this? I hope it's a fun question. Where's this going?
It is a fun question.
Where's this going 7 to 10 years from now?
Our BHAG is we are no longer in business because the community is thriving and doesn't need our support. And if we are in business, the financial model looks a lot different. So like Kingswood, people are paying for all the services because they're thriving. They can afford to do that. The warehouse, parents are paying for their kids to come here. And for Reach Riverside, we moved on to other communities to help them because Riverside no longer needs our support. That's the BHAG.
How do you feel the data looks to support that journey so far? I know you've got a lot of winning.
I'll just say this because I think we started off the conversation like this. Did I imagine, or could I have imagined where we are today based upon like where we started in the vision? No. So what does it look like? I have no idea. I could say that whatever it's going to be is something I probably can't even imagine. And one of our core values is remember when you prayed for what you have today. So in 5 years from now, I know I'm just going to be thankful where we are, just like I am today.
Logan, couple of final questions. Business has to make choices to carry things out on priorities. You've got customers that have profound needs. Are you ever in a spot where choice in the customer, where you have to delay an idea? I guess you're constantly fundraising for the thought process forward. It seems like you're getting to that intersection with the speed of work, but I also think we're talking about 10 years. It's easy to look at that lens. Just be curious about your perspective, because maybe that fuels that future too.
It does. We're working on some big strategic investments that I have to be patient about. So it is a conflict, and we're working through that. But we'll get there.
Yes. So we'll end on a question. I'm going to modify it. What advice would you give that 23-year-old Logan Herring?
Bamboo takes about 5 years to grow before it comes out of the surface. And it's really strong when it does. So if you're frustrated about the benefits, the rewards of the work that you're doing, just be patient, because when it sprouts, it's going to be really strong and really powerful.
And you can harvest it, and it's sustainable.
Bingo.
Well done, Logan.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to have you on Outside Insights. Enjoy your company, and as I like knowing that the world's small and we have a lot in common.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This has been a phenomenal time.